Well, a Chinese form of Nvidia has been listed on the Chinese stock exchange known as the Shanghai Market Exchange in simple terms. But however, the big scenario that's going to be coming, you as a foreign investor, well, you cannot join the rally one or the other. We should try to understand that in the first place, why you cannot join the rally. Well, first and foremost, there are rules. And here's the funny part. This is kind of a scenario where you're going to be understanding why China and the US are creating real lines or red lines where one another should cross one another. If you're interested in such kind of topics where you understand why stocks and the difference between the changing economics, well, like us, that's why in the video, because you're going to understand why the stock market in the China market or the Shanghai market is rallying. It's really going high. The AI, known as more threads, almost thriving by almost towards just the AI thriving around almost what we'll be calling 400%, actually 700% if you add it up with the Meta X. These are all forms of AI. I would say those are chip makers, GPU makers, and here's the sad, like the real sad part about it, or the most scary part about it. Ex-workers of Nvidia in the US, most ex-workers, most exclusive workers who used to work in Nvidia today are found to be more working for more threads in China actually. If you're thinking like the GPU making of China could be far, I promise you maybe like in the next 3 or 4 years, China is likely to do what you should be saying, likely to catch up in one or the other. We should try to understand that what's IPOs in simple terms, or why do companies do IPOs in the first place. IPOs means one or two things. It means that's when a company moves from a private company and turns out to be a private company, like to a public company. You should try to understand when companies turn out from private to public, it means one or two things. It indicates the following in the first place. Well, the company turns public. However, how does the process of becoming public turns out in the first place? You should try to understand one. The company turns public in one way. Well, when the company wants to turn out public, it initiates itself to the investment companies. Let's say companies that are responsible for investments. In simple terms, it works out with any investment company. Let's say the Shanghai market. Then they set a price for its shares, or the shares likely to be selling to the public. In that process, at the end of the process, it turns out to be what we'll be calling a publicly traded company. Well, same thing happened to the Chinese AI companies, and these Chinese AI companies are likely to be more threads and Meta X in simple terms. I don't mean Meta X of Facebook. No, I mean Meta X of China in one or the other. We should try to understand that such a criteria means one or two things. These companies opened up at the Chinese stock market, which we say the US version of the Nasdaq, or in simple terms, what's known as the Chinese stock market. And one or the other, and you should try to understand why you as a foreign investor will not develop, and why China is taking such a course. We should try to understand that if China decided to cut off foreign investors in one or the other, one of the Chinese policymakers said is close to impossible, known as a president, exclusive director of the Chinese Financial Services Fund, because he said that to open up a brokerage, you must have with the onshore broker of mainland China in simple terms. And however, that also comes with a code. You must have a proof of residence. Okay, to join this kind of rally, you must have a proof of residence. You must have also a home Chinese bank. And here's another sad part. Most foreign banks have no connection with the brokerage of the stock market of China. They have no interconnection or reality codes where they would say like, okay, I can use my Western bank for trading Chinese stocks. For now, it's not likely to be possible, and I can understand why China is taking such a move. Because one or two, we should try to understand that we are speaking of tech that's taking war between two countries. We are speaking of kind of tech that's indicating one or two things in the first place. It indicates that there's a war or crucially that's taking place between China and the US. And the way this is only implemented for the domestic market, it means one or two things. You must be a resident in China. You must have proof of residence. This means that China is trying to control capital flights in one way or the other, try and control the gains or losses likely to be conducted in China, because this kind of tech is kind of a kind of a controversy in one way or the other. It's protecting its morals from let's say the Trump policies, because imagine if such companies having US investors, well, Trump will be telling them one or the other to make sure they take out their investment from such companies, or they dictate the rules of how those companies should be conducting themselves with China. And that's what China is trying its level-based control. You should try to understand that seeing China introducing such companies, where does leave companies like Nvidia? We are seeing today that AI in the stock market in the US still standing because of one company, Nvidia. And Nvidia today is getting the biggest seller of Nvidia chips, or biggest buyer of Nvidia chips has been China. And as I speak of today, China is no longer purchasing chips from Nvidia. Actually, today Nvidia is free to sell. US gave a free pass to Nvidia, to be selling chips to China. But however, China, as we speak of right now, is not taking in any kind of chip to China, like selling it to China. They are actually kind of banned in one or the other. It's not like really straightforward, but they are like fully banned, because they are doing their level best to make sure that everything is in-house and there's no interdependence or independence to any other anything out of China. China is starting something that's likely to be, I would say, I can self-make myself. Like, I build the thing brick by brick. That's the kind of culture we should try to understand. Because as I speak of right now, I will understand why China is doing this, because my other view of how China is stopping it is like taking a second move is to control what we call volatility and speculation. Well, if you look at stock markets in the US, most of these they are bits of speculations, bubble, AI bubble, AI bubble. Myself on this channel also speculate AI bubbles one or the other. However, we speculate them with real factors. You should try to understand that China making such a move is trying to make its home investment or domestic investors to feel at home one or the other, to feel like their home should have such a kind of budget, other than giving gains to overseas investors. It's doing such a thing to understand that it's doing its level best to make sure its gains stay at home. It's doing its level best to make sure it's not interdependent to anyone as a foreigner, because I mean, maybe it learned from the big lessons from the past between the war between it and the US. You should try to understand that China is trying to create a lane of a path where it's likely to be unstoppable, because it understood the path that maybe if you work with the US, you're going to find yourself following the rules of a dictator in one or the other. You're going to find yourself in the rules where we should be saying, like, you're going to find yourself in a way like you have to be under someone's rules, and someone can interrupt you according to the goals you have in this kind of economy. What does this mean for the US companies one or the other? What does this mean for the coming, where we see companies like Sam Altman hoping to spend almost 13 billion per year in the next 8 years on investing on AI? As we see AI companies in China getting also on track, we should try to understand that the way China is investing in these AI companies and how it's allocating itself is kind of smarter than the US actually, because there's no overspending in China other than in the US, and their spending is casually, I would say, kind of smarter. I'm not saying the US are not smart, they just that money, no, call me right, but the way how they're involving the way they're building their tech, it's kind of making the US markets kind of scared, because we're gonna say, okay, if the AI the US work out, who are they gonna be selling it to? Okay, they have a market like, I would say they'll be selling it to Europe. Would they be also selling it to Africa? Because we also have something known as the BRICS. There's something that you try to understand, that China has dominated productivity for years, and schooners and still dominated productivity in one or the other. The way it's competing and the way it's working out, others are sleeping. And this is one of the main reason why China is developing and why its GDP keeps on running high. One or the other, we should try to understand that many of the countries, I don't mind the authentic countries or the Western countries, all these countries are sleeping one way or the other. They have forgotten what they call productivity, they have forgotten what they call competition, other than maybe they're resorting to war one way or the other. You should try to understand that China, as we speak of today, as a right now, we should be really taking it serious in China like on a serious scene. The way how it's evolving, the way how it's running, it takes me back to the US stock and all the US AI companies. Because as today we speak, they have what they call an inter-buy or an inter-support, where you buy someone's goods so that in next time he can buy back your goods. However, productivity is nowhere to be seen. And the way Chinese are putting their companies onto the public stocks like the Shanghai market, regardless, you as a foreign investor, you may not be able to get involved because they are trying to control capital flights one or the other, which is understandable, and they are making sure that their markets don't just overestimate in one morning and then end up the next morning, just like we saw the Trump coin one or the other. We should try to understand that such a thing means one or two things. These guys are trying to invest smartly, are trying to make sure whatever they're investing in is not for a short time period, it's for a long time period. And this is not the same way how the US market works. Regardless, I'm happy with how US market works because it's it's open-minded. Like, it's a free market. However, the Chinese market is not really kind of a free market. It's kind of I would say, a communal market because there's control. There's high control about capital flights. Otherwise, thank you for watching. See you in the next one.